Hey, Margie here. So often I'm asked specific questions on what should I eat, when should I eat, and why. And these are great questions, and there's so many different answers. But we're going to explore this topic today with my very special guest, JJ Virgin. And JJ is a wonderful colleague of mine who has written 4 New York Times bestsellers: The Virgin Diet, The Virgin Diet Cookbook, the Sugar Impact Diet, the Sugar Impact Diet Cookbook, as well as her memoir, Warrior Mom: 7 Secrets to Bold, Brave Resilience, exploring the powerful lessons in strength and positivity that she learned after her son Grant was the victim of a brutal hit and run accident. She's also a frequent guest on TV and radio and speaks at major events. In addition to her work with nutrition and fitness, JJ is also a business coach and founded the premier health entrepreneur event and community, the Mindshare Summit, which I'm part of. And I'm very excited. She's hosting a summit called What to Eat, When to Eat, and Why. And today in this talk, we discuss this topic and we go over specifics that people can put into their life and what are, from all the experts she interviewed for her summit, what were the common grounds? What were the most important things that we need to that really can make a difference in our lives? So that's what we talk about today. It's filled with great information, and JJ is just a wealth of knowledge and experience. And I had such a good time being with her. So stay tuned. Welcome, JJ, to the podcast. I am really, really excited to be here with you. We've known each other for quite a long time, and I'm just really happy to have you. You've changed so many people's lives, both professionals as well as just the world. So it's just great to be here. So thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Right back at you.
So,
Or making a dent, right, Margie?
oh, so much of a dent. But I just have to tell everyone, besides JJ writing phenomenal books, influencing people for decades, she also has a community of healthcare practitioners who are integrative, who are forward thinking, and you've cultivated this amazing community. And so many of the people I've had on the podcast and so many of the friendships I've made is because of your Mindshare Mastermind. So I just have to thank you personally for that piece, which is a very big piece of what you've done as well.
It is honestly my most biggest love is that because, when you think about how do I go out and help millions of people? Well, if you just go out and help the people that are helping the people, then you help the millions of people, right?
It's so
So
true. It's so true. And the philosophy of the Mindshare is the rising tide lifts all ships. So it's just such a beautiful community. We work together. There's not competition. We're all
yeah,
helping each other really to make a difference in the world. And we have, but this is something you started, and you must just be so proud of what the work that you've done, because it's so exciting.
it is fun. Every time I walk out on that stage, like we're going to be in a short amount of time, I'm like humbled and like, oh my, look at all these people here.
It really is fabulous. I know so many people ask me, Margie, where do you get all these amazing guests? And so many of them are people that I met through the Mindshare community. So it's really wonderful. Okay, so I love this new summit that you're doing. I love the title: What to Eat, When to Eat, and Why. And those questions, even though they seem simple, are so important because people just don't know. So before we get into that, I just want a little bit about your background, because you started off back in the 80s as a fitness instructor and weight loss. So just
Mhm.
a little bit quickly of how you got from that place to what you're doing now.
And actually, it's perfect for why I have this summit going on. So I first started out as a trainer. And what happened was I was teaching dance. I actually went off to UCLA to be a theater major and to be a musical theater actress and dancer. Can't act, not that great of a dancer. So, at some point you go, yeah, probably not. But along the way, I started teaching aerobics. And I remember I was teaching aerobics and someone wanted me to come to their house and give them private classes. And that's how I became a personal trainer. And there were 3 of us, as far as we can tell, that started this movement. And it was back in LA in the early 80s. And So I started with that. I immediately graduated. When I graduated from UCLA, I started in exercise science. But what became really clear really quick was that you couldn't really out exercise a poor diet. That a lot of people were coming in and they wanted, back then it was all about weight loss. I want to lose weight. And I was like, but we've got to change your diet. And it's funny, I was, in a PhD program in exercise physiology, and I drop out to go study nutrition because I was like, okay, kind of learned everything you can with exercise, but what can I do with nutrition? And as I started to go through all of this, the biggest question I get asked, I bet you do too. And it's funny, this actually came, I was talking to Dr. Mark Hyman about it, and he wrote the book, What the Heck Should I Eat? Because every time we would go do something, we did a live stream with a bunch of health experts on all sorts of different topics. And ultimately, everyone wanted to know, what do you eat? And what do you do to cheat? And I'm like, I'm so disappointed because we don't really cheat. Sorry to blow your, blow it, but yeah, you know. So when you really look at the needle movers for health, like what can you do to start to feel better fast? It's really changing what's at the end of your fork. And yes, then you can start doing all the other things like work on your sleep and your stress and you got to exercise. But if it was just like, okay, I've got a month and I really want to make a difference in my energy and my focus and maybe drop some inflammation and weight, it's going to be food first, right?
Yes, I so agree because I started similar to you as a physical therapist. And when my son had diabetes, I saw, oh my gosh, how food is so life-changing. And that's
Yeah.
when I said, I have to learn this and add this because this is the very, very big missing piece.
Right. It's so life changing. And it's so confusing. Like there's so much information and sadly there's so much misinformation and that it's just, I hate to say it, but it's the politicization. Can you say that? Of food? I remember when I was on Dr. Phil, we were going to take over a town in Texas, Elgin, Texas. And, we were taking over the high school and somehow, I don't know, I was like, did I have like a bullseye on my back? They're like, we just took out all the fast food and the vending machines. You go in and explain it to the teens. I'm like, great, that's awesome. But the biggest challenge we had is that all of these schools have contracts, government contracts with the food companies. So you can't really pull out the tater tots and the ketchup, which by the way, in the food system, tater tots and ketchup count as vegetable. So it's
Crazy.
so you just kind of learn how challenging it is to change this. And then even the even the food guide recommendations, when you look at this, the food guide pyramid that became the My Plate, you go, well, where on earth did this come from? And where did the protein recommendations come from? And you go, we're way past like trying to keep people from having scurvy. So how did we end up building a pyramid and then building a circle that is based on the one macronutrient we can live without? I mean, so, if you have your macronutrients of fat, protein, and carbohydrates, and, I think water and fiber need to be there, right? But those three, and you go, we have to have fat, we have to have protein, we could live without carbohydrates, but yet we built a diet that, that the carbohydrates are the mainstay. It's like a head scratcher, right?
Oh, so true. That pyramid is just it, and
The circle doesn't
Same
make it any
still.
better.
Oh, no, no, they did some improvements, but it's still I remember the last one I saw still had margarine or something on the picture.
Margarine.
And I was like, "Are you kidding? How could that be on the picture?"
You know what's so crazy about that one? And I had a really amazing mentor early on in nutrition. He said, you want competition for your food. He said, if you put margarine outside, the bugs will not touch it. Because if the bugs won't eat it, you have no business touching it. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah. But, I've been traveling a bunch for the last couple months, like crazy travel. Dubai, Maldives, Istanbul, uh, all over Italy. I just got back from Peru. And what's amazing to us as we travel, my husband and I are like, we're so careful at home. We buy Butcher Box and Vital Choice and we get organic. And yet we feel so much better when we're in these countries like Peru, where they have 190 microclimates and everything's organic and grass fed and finished because that's what they don't do anything else but that, and you go, it is, we have to be so much more focused and aware in the United States. And, when I wrote the Virgin Diet, like you don't even need that book in other countries. Because you don't have wheat sprayed with glyphosate and corn sprayed with glyphosate. You don't have GMO corn and soy fed to the, to the cows, and this adulterated A1, milk. It's just, we don't have the issues in these other countries that we have here. And you just look at the crazy acceleration of disease in this country, especially autoimmune disease and cancers. And you look at what's changed in our country, and what's changed is the toxic burden. And the biggest source of that toxic burden is our food. So
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back. So, okay, so you're the trainer and you found how did you end up changing what you were doing? Was it working or was it not working or?
um so I started training, and I remember back then, because it was a new profession. I started training, and then I started training trainers to be trainers. But my clients were asking nutrition questions, and I'm like going, shoot, I'm trying to just read wherever I could. And then I remember going to school, and I was sitting there, I was going, I didn't want to become a dietitian because I didn't like what they were being taught. And I was trying to figure out how I was going to learn this. And it was even 20 years ago, I was starting to go to all the IFM stuff. And I remember going to a nutrition class, and there were literally the dietitians were sitting in the front of the room, and they were telling us that you could get all the nutrition you needed from a potato. And I'm looking at them, and they looked like potatoes. And I'm like going, okay, you are what you eat. But I'm like going, we know that's not true. You can't get, where are you getting your essential fatty acids and B12? Like not true. So I really, it was a real challenge to try to find what I wanted to find. I had to piecemeal kind of, hack together an education where I've been in 7 different graduate schools, and, a lot of conferences to put this together. And I think the biggest thing with nutrition is if you understand biochemistry, right? And you really like nutrition is just biochemistry and endocrinology. Like, that's what you really need to look at. Like, what is the hormonal impact of food? That's why you can't just look at calories. While calories count, you got to look at the hormonal impact of them. You cannot say that, a calorie is a calorie. It's obvious a Snickers bar is different than salmon. Like,
Absolutely.
and I know it's the age-old fight. And as I'm working now on this next book, and we're looking at all the different, I'm looking at reading everything, because I think it's important to be critically open-minded and take all the differing opinions. Because it's really easy to fall down in your avenue and go, I'm going to keep going along here. And everyone that speaks my language, nope, I'm looking at everything. And there is a huge camp out there that just says it's calories and calorie excess and deficits. And I'm, but what about the hormonal impacts? If you say that, then what about artificial sweeteners and how they cause glucose intolerance and lead to diabetes and lay more fat around your waistline? How can you say that? How can you say, like, during the pandemic, I went through a massively stressful situation. And I started gaining a pound a day. And every day I'd step on the scale, I was like, a pound more. And, I'm like the scientist side of me is like, this is really fascinating. The female side of me is like, oh my gosh, it's like, and, my first crazy thought was, well, I should just eat less and exercise more. And I go, hello, this is not what you know better. Like, better. This is not going to fix anything. And it didn't. I had to go back. Like, I had an autoimmune hit from all the stress. I had to go back and fix it. But it is really important for us to be able to unpack all of this and go, all right, where should we start? What's the good foundation for eating? And what was interesting in this summit was, everyone still had the same foundation, even though there were different things. Like, we divided into 7 different days of different topics. Like, what do you do for blood sugar, detoxification, sports performance, burning fat, anti-aging. So we looked at all those, but there's still some, whether you're vegan, whether you're paleo, whether you're keto, whether you're doing this for blood sugar, whether you're saying, there's still some foundational things that everybody actually agreed on, which is amazing. Now, there were some fights over lectins and, but there's still some basics that, everyone was in agreement on, which was kind of cool about it. And I think the biggest agreement everybody had was like, it does start with food.
Yeah. So maybe share some of because it's interesting, every single aspect of how you divided it, each one of those pieces has been related to bone density and bone health. So, all of those pieces are just so important for all of us. So why
Yeah.
don't you sort of go through, if you share, and maybe some things that the listeners can take home with them that were like some of the main points you found out. I mean, and this because this is what you've been working with and seeing the effects. But what would
Yeah.
you share in terms of, when people ask that question? It's a huge question, and you have many hours. This could be, we could talk, 10 hours on this. But what would you say if you had to give your top points that, to answer the question of, what to eat, the first part?
Yeah. And it was funny. I was taking notes during this thing. I would come out and go, I really got to add more fermented vegetables into what I'm doing. The first very important thing, and it's one of those things I've been looking at for a while, going, I think diet book authors write the book for them. We all have our bias, right? And so the most important thing is that you've got to listen to your body. Just because keto is good for some people doesn't make it good for all people, or intermittent fasting, or a vegan diet, or whatever it is. So I think that's the single underlying thing, is pay attention, connect the dots between what you're eating and how you feel.
I love that, because so often this worked for my friend. And
Yep.
so many people adopt a diet because their friend looks amazing, and it's the absolute worst thing for them. So that's
Right.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, and then they're like, okay, it's not working, so I'll do more of it because I'm crazy, right? And we've all done it. So I'm making a joke of it because I've probably done it more than anybody. So I think that's the first really important, probably foundational idea, because if you own that, and I'm going to do a corollary to that has to do with intuitive eating, because intuitive eating only will work if you've got a clean vessel. If you are eating foods that are I know they're called ultra processed, and I love Max Lugavere did an amazing interview for this summit where he really broke this down. I call them dirty processed foods. They are designed to screw up your intuitive, your inner guidance system, like your inner GPS, right? And so you cannot use an intuitive approach to eating if you've been eating all of these dirty processed foods, because you're messed up. Your guidance system's messed up. So you have to get rid of all of the foods that could be wreaking havoc. That's where I talk about the swaps, things that could be creating inflammation and causing cravings and causing food intolerance. Because if you're eating those, you can't hear. So that's a super important point. Now, everyone pretty much agreed that we need to be eating clean protein. There was a little discussion probably about how much, but I'll tell you, most of the health experts at this point are much more on we are not eating anywhere near enough protein. And hopefully that RDA of 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight is going to get blown up. Gabrielle Lyon talked about on the show about how those guidelines came out of World War II, when we were trying to survive the famine. And so what they were doing was they lowered the protein requirements, right? So that to what people minimally would need, so they wouldn't die, right? And then they were sending more protein to the troops. And then nothing got adjusted. Like, if you look at when that RDA came out, it was World War II. You can go back and do the research. It shows it. And so I think, that was one of the key things, is we need to eat more protein. Now, where it comes from, big debate as to what, but everyone was in agreement of that. If you're eating animals, you got to eat clean protein, because the factory stuff that you see out there is basically the white bread of protein.
And it's so important for this community, because people, I don't know where it came from, but there are, people used to think, oh, too much protein is going to leach calcium in your urine, or too much, that there was a problem. And all the research has shown that it's critical to have enough protein. As we age, we don't have enough. And I actually listened, because those were one of the talks that I guess when you sign up for your summit, you have 3 talks, and Gabrielle Lyons was one of the talks. So that was an excellent talk on protein.
Amazing.
Yeah.
She's doing now. She was in our Mindshare mastermind, and I am just like watching and going, she is just getting the best information out there. And that silliness about calcium leaching from the bones. Johnny Bowden wrote the best rebuttal to that one. It's like, yes, there's going to be more calcium excretion because you've got more calcium. You know, so what are we looking at? There's like these crazy protein myths about it's hard on your kidneys. Not if you don't have kidney disease. So, you got to look back and go, where is this information coming from? When you
And the
look,
good news, though, now is that the research, and especially in bone health, totally supports the increased protein intake. So it's, at least research is backing this up, because it is
yeah,
craziness. It is craziness that people, as they're getting older and they're getting sarcopenia and they're getting weak because they're just not eating enough protein. It's so sad, and an easy swap, as you say, it's
yeah.
something easy to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an easy swap. The one thing that I'm looking at, 'cause, my next book after my next book is going to be all around aging powerfully and what you need to do with protein and weight training. And the one thing we've got to remember is as we age, we don't break down our protein as well either. And digestive enzymes are like, a miracle for us.
Yeah.
So I like go everywhere with my digestive enzymes. So that's a super important one. So protein was definitely one. Um, there was so much one of the questions I asked a lot of the experts at the end was like, if I was dropping you off on a desert island, what would be the three things? And it is hilarious to hear some of their answers. So I was like, what? But for the most part, everyone said some kind of protein and some kind of vegetable. So there are a couple surprising answers in there, but everyone had some kind of protein, some kind of vegetable. And, everyone had their vegetable things on this one. Everyone wanted to talk about which vegetables you needed to eat and why. So it was a lot on the microbiome. I loved, Dr. Stephen Gundry. I've known him for, I think, 20 years. And he had a great explanation of why the carnivore diet is problematic. And it's problematic because you got to have these vegetables for the polyphenols for your gut microbiome, right? So there's a lot of really great information you can dig into, go, oh, okay, that's why I need it. So the clear winners across this was, clean animal protein, clean protein sources, and then a really good rainbow of these non-starchy vegetables with a lot of polyphenols in them. Now, our buddy Tom O'Brien, always a crowd pleaser. Oh my gosh.
I love, he truly changed my husband's life with gluten, but yeah, so he's one of my favorites.
Great. So he did a great talk. And one of the things he talks about is like, okay, you need your protein, you need your non-starch vegetables, then you need your roots, then you need a little bit of apple, and then you need some fermented vegetables. So that was a really good one too, for just why we need these things for our microbiome, for our pre and probiotics, what prebiotics should we be eating. A lot of people talked about the prebiotics, and a prebiotic being a simple way to feed the good bacteria in your gut. They're like the fertilizer, and how we get those. But, the best part about all of this is it's super duper actionable information, and it focuses not on what you shouldn't eat. We might have bashed the dirty processed oils a bit, but the most part, it really focuses on what you should be eating, and
Yeah.
gives you a lot of great tips on, why you need to be eating root vegetables, why you want to have mushrooms, why you want to have fermented foods, what they're going to do for you. And if we are talking about things you should pull out, and, I know there's this big controversy over seed oils, but, I just don't think canola and corn oil and soybean oil need to be in our diet. I don't know why we'd want to have things that are more inflammatory when we're already more inflammatory, right?
It's true. And I think people just aren't aware of it. That's what I really love about what you've put together, because if you understand the why, it's going to really change. If you just heard, oh, this isn't good, it doesn't mean much. But if you understand the why behind it, that it's inflammatory and it's going to affect how you feel, you're so much more likely to say, yeah, I'll choose a different oil. But I also love the swaps, your sheet that's available for anybody who signs up just as a gift. It's really good, JJ, because you give, I think it's important. You can't just take things away. You can't. but you give an alternative, which is so very helpful.
Well, when I started, I took things away. So let's just talk about how this happened. When I first started with this, and especially when I started pulling the 7 foods out, at first, actually, the Virgin Diet, when it started, was not 7.
What year was that? How long ago was the Virgin Diet? I have the book right here. It was a while ago, right?
I published it 2012.
Mm.
However, I was doing that work, years before that, and it wasn't 7 foods, it was 6. And sugar wasn't one of them. So, and what happened was I would have people pull out these foods because I kept seeing them show up on food sensitivity testing. And of course, I had to pull out gluten because it was creating leaky gut. So gluten, dairy, eggs, corn, soy, peanuts, I was having people pull out because they're the ones I saw all the time. I was like going, I don't understand this elimination diet because I'm never seeing these foods as problematic. So I would pull these foods out and it was wild what would happen. Like people were dropping 5, 10 pounds in a week. And I'm like, holy smokes. But when I did pull sugar out, so I just say, hey, pull these foods out. They started eating sugar. I'm like, "Don't no, no, no. Whoa, stop." They're like, "Look at these gluten-free things I found." Okay, great. I gotta pull out sugar because it totally disrupts your gut microbiome. But if I don't tell them what to put in, they're going and finding worse things. Like this is no bueno. So I realized I had to give really good swaps. And I'll tell you, 15 years ago, there weren't really good swaps. Like I was saying, okay, now go to the Asian section of the supermarket to find the coconut milk in the can, and then go, like it was really hard. Now it's so simple. However, it can get challenging because there are so many poser health foods, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
There's
that's so
those are
true.
foods out there that look like they're good for you, and then you look at them and you're like, "It's got agave syrup, it's got apple juice concentrate, it's got canola oil," and so you've gotta be really careful, and that's why we've really been focusing now, especially with the next book, on just making a huge list of swaps because, it's a nightmare to go to the supermarket with your magnifying glass and have to look at all this stuff, and you certainly can't look at the front of the label because they can so easily lie on a label and say, "No sugar added," and then you flip it around, it's got apple juice concentrate, which has got more fructose than a Coke, you
It's
know?
so true because it's not intuitive, a lot of these things. Or even it was
Yeah.
interesting, I was looking at your swap sheet, and even carrot juice was something that was on you had a swap for carrot juice, which was
I
interesting.
I remember way back when, I had a client who lived on carrot juice. Like, that's all she drank so much carrot juice, and at the time, I was like, "Huh." It didn't it was this was probably this was 30 years ago, 30 years.
Well,
And I was like, Why is carrot juice so bad?" I couldn't put and I mean, she could not lose weight. She had like, blood sugar. It's just like, oh geez. You know, you just wouldn't think of these things. And it's like, I'm not even a fan. Like, if you're gonna do green drinks, put some, chia or flax in there to temper and get the fiber up. You just defibered this thing and you give yourself a hit. So, we got to really think about these things and what the impact to our blood sugar is, but you look at like, especially fruit, especially apple juice. I did this talk for Mind Valley where I said, an apple juice is worse for you than a Coke. And they took that piece and they put it all over the place. And people were like, it was like, I don't know, insulting their mother or something. I'm like, this is just look at it. It's got more fructose than a Coke. It's like not me. But I think we really have to be careful because it's so easy to lie on a label, put all natural. Well, something could be all natural and have like, lead in it.
yeah, it's so true, and I
It's
think
natural,
back to before I
right?
knew
Uh,
anything, and my kids were drinking those apple juice, they had containers, like sippy things, so for young toddlers,
mhm.
you can just put the apple juice container right in it, and you could, give it to them throughout the day. Wonderful,
Wonder like, they were doing that. Like you wonder you've got kids now with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Like this shouldn't be. Clearly something's
Absolutely.
up. So, I just know that if we can just start and just start to make these shifts one at a time, prioritize them, starting with food, if you really look at what's going on here, like the biggest change we can make in the health, which will change the world, because the biggest challenge we have is our health. And if you don't have your health, you know that saying, "He who has his health has 1,000 dreams, and he who doesn't has one." You change your health, you change everything. It's our biggest expense. It's our biggest pain point, and the biggest way you can shift it is with food.
Yeah, I love that. Can we just hit the when for a minute? Because that a lot of people really don't know that piece. They really don't know about the when, and people are eating
Yeah.
all hours of the day. So you want to just
Uh,
share a few tidbits on the when?
I'm trying to think of which expert said this one about how much we're eating now, which I mean, I think back just when I was growing up and you'd get up, you'd have breakfast, you'd go to school, you'd have lunch, you'd come home, you'd have a snack after school, and then you'd have dinner and shut the kitchen. And then all of a sudden, I remember in the 80s, it was when they took the fat out of everything, right? Fat was in all of a sudden, we were supposed to graze. That was the dietitian thing was graze, eat breakfast, a snack, lunch, a snack, dinner, a snack, because you wanted to keep your metabolism up. And if you got hungry, like God forbid, I don't know. Wait, and I remember one famous diet book author, I'm not gonna blow him out, but he was like, "You need to have a snack before bed. Like, make sure you have the." And I'm like, "Wow, what?" Like, wow. So, the big agreement everybody has is that you need to stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bed, and Siobhan Sarna did a great explanation as to why we need to not snack and why you have to stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bed. And it shows up, like, if you're tracking your sleep, you will see it in your sleep tracker if you eat right before bed. Um, After that, like, everyone was in agreement. 12-hour at least overnight fast, stop snacking. However, the intermittent fasting, which is, where 1 meal a day fasting or other fasting, really depends on the person and what they're trying to do. Someone who is fragile, someone who's got adrenal issues, someone who's trying to build muscle. Hey, compressed eating windows are not the thing for you. Right. And that was clear in this. And then someone who is, trying to stabilize their blood sugar, trying to become more insulin sensitive. Boy, shorten the window. Right. So, and I think that's important. Just like there's bio individuality in your diet, there's definitely tools for meal timing, and everyone shouldn't intermittent fast just because it's the cool thing to do at the moment. Right.
That's such a good point because, as we said, you hear something and you want to jump on the bandwagon and you think, oh, this is for me. And it could be the worst thing
Yeah.
for you. So yes, that's so,
Yeah.
so
And,
true.
and the whole idea of like, I feel bad, I should keep going. No, you know, listen. So yeah, it was really interesting to hear about when you should eat in different situations. And there's definitely times that intermittent fasting can be great and times when it is not recommended. And then the whys behind all of these different things. So you go, and hearing different perspectives. So you go, "Okay, I finally get it. I might have had to hear it 5 times, but the way he said it made sense."
Yeah, I love that. That's why I love summits. I'm a summit junkie. I've been listening to summits ever since Dr. Tom O'Brien's summit, which I think the first really big summit on gluten, because it's just fascinating and you learn so much. Before we
Yeah.
end, JJ, because there's so much we could talk about, but I just want you to share, if you don't mind, because I have so much respect for how you handle the situation. And and I really believe in never giving up and even when the odds are against you. And so could you just share a little bit about your story with Grant? Because I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, so right, like, it was literally a month before the book launch was supposed to start for the Virgin Diet, and my son I came home that night, I'd been taping videos for the public television special, and my son went out and was walking to a friend's house. It was dusk, crossing the street and got hit by a car. Now, all we know was the neighbor was driving down this street, saw my son lying in the ground, this woman getting out of her car, looking back, getting back in her car and driving off, which still is like amazing to me. But he fortunately like protected him from oncoming traffic, called 911, And my ex-husband and other son, who was just 15, my son was 16, Grant, my other son was 15, happened to be driving by the site, see see the paramedics, everything else. Now, Grant had been airlifted to the local hospital, but they look at my other son and they go, a boy was hit. He looked just like him because they looked like twins. They were a year apart. So we rushed to the hospital, and this was in Palm Springs, California. And the trauma unit in Palm Springs, California is like, it would be very different if we were in another city, but, the average age in Palm Springs is like 70, 80 years old. And if someone gets hit by a car and you're 70 or 80, it's a very different situation than when you're 16. So the trauma surgeon there was like, you got to let him go. We walk in the door and he's like, your son has multiple brain bleeds. He's in a deep coma. He has a torn aorta. It's going to rupture sometime in the next 24 hours if it's not repaired, but we can't repair it here because we don't do the specialized surgery that he needs because he's got brain bleeds. And besides that, like when we go to see him, he had 13 fractures. He literally had, Margie. I was like, I'll never forget. I'm standing there looking, and it was like I was like, I think your brain does this because, like, as a mom, pretty much I always said I could handle anything in my life as long as my kids are okay. Like if my kids are okay, you know, give it to me, take it. But if my kid's not okay, like I will lay down my life. So I'm looking at my son and there's bone sticking out of his skin and there's road rash and he's on a ventilator. And I'm like, it's like your brain's going, this is not real, like not real, right? Meanwhile, my 15-year-old, like my ex-husband are like, blah, my 15-year-old is like the adult, he walks over and he says, dude, you look really ugly right now, but if anyone can make it, you can. And I'm like, we went to a doctor and the doctor's like, he's never going to survive the airlift to this next hospital. And even if he survives this airlift, he'll never survive the surgery. And even if he were to survive the surgery, he would be so brain damaged, it wouldn't be worth it. And my 15-year-old son's looking at that doctor. And I think this is so important. We've always modeled like, possibility and abundance and, no limits. And so Bryce looks at this doctor and goes, so maybe like a 0.0125% chance he'd make it. And the doctor says, yeah, that sounds about right. He goes, not zero. We'll take those odds. And thankfully, my ex-husband's a medical malpractice trial attorney. So he's like started the litigious speak and boy, we got him airlifted to the next hospital. And it was so interesting. And it just shows you like, you've got to, question things. And I honestly had nightmares because a couple months later, I was still in the hospital at UCLA or we'd moved maybe to Children's Hospital. Another child had a similar type of thing happen. Um, I forget, a skateboard injury and died at that hospital in Palm Springs. And I was trying to get to the parents to say, get him out of there, get him out
Oh,
there. Because we get to the next hospital and the doctor walks out and he goes, I got this. I do this all the time. Someone got thrown off an overpass last week. I fixed that. So I'm totally going to fix them. Do not worry about it. Come to find out this doctor in the middle of the night recruited 5 teams, the neurosurgeons and the orthopedic surgeons and brought them all in, did this, like, I'm like, you are like the angel savior for me. And it's been a rough road. Like when we walked out of surgery that next morning and, the doctor's like, okay, he's all fixed, but I don't know if he'll wake up. Right. Cause he was the plumber and the neurosurgeons are like, we don't know if he's going to wake up. And I'm like, he's waking up. He's waking up. And I remember sitting there and holding his finger going, you're going to be 110%. I'm going to pull in the troops, but you got to fight. And I just wouldn't let myself, Margie. I so realize now that this is how important it is when you've got something going on to have such a clear vision of your future self and what you want to be. I was so clear on seeing his life and what it was going to be like and his purpose. And I would not allow myself to entertain any other idea. And, that was it. And I just figured, you know what? I just need to know that I've done everything within my power. Like I'm going to recruit everything. I'm going to do whatever. And I'm not going to entertain any what ifs in there. And every time a what if would do it, I would like call a lifeline friend and go, okay, talk me out of this. And just, I kept such a clear vision of him And we all did. We sat there and talked to him about what it was going to be like, how it was going to be 110%, how he's going to prove every doctor wrong. And he left UCLA in an ambulance to go to Children's Hospital. And then a couple months later, he walked back into UCLA, Harbor UCLA, and they were like, what? Talking to everybody. And, the kid who was never supposed to talk, never supposed to walk up, probably the one thing we found that he had was some hearing loss. And they're like, he'll never hear out of that ear. He hears out of that ear. So, you
Yeah,
know,
seeing him, you brought him to Mindshare. He's quite amazing.
yeah. So you just, I mean, you see enough of this now with these miracles. Why not you? Right. And, that's the biggest thing. I don't believe that you can be healed and healthy if you can't see yourself there.
I
So
love that. And why not send that image just like you did, JJ, out to the universe? Like why send the fear out? So I just think,
yeah.
it was just it's such a beautiful story because it has a happy ending and you didn't give up. I just love
Oh, I
that.
will
You
tell you
kept
though,
going.
Mark, when I wrote the book, which became the Warrior Mom, I first was called Miracle Mindset. And I was like, that is not the right title. So but as I was writing the book, um, my son was suicide. So one of the things that happens when you have a brain injury is it is a high suicide risk, which I didn't know. They said, hey, when your son wakes up, it'll be ugly. I didn't know that it would be ugly for like 8 years.
Mm,
I thought like, he'd yell when he woke up in that bed. I didn't know that he'd really come out of a coma over months and months and months. And that the first part of it, he'd be staring off into space, just moving an arm. And I'm like, uh-oh. But brain injuries and it's like this, there's incredible statistics around brain injuries that are just, people don't realize it because you can't see it. Right. And the suicide risk is insane. And as I was writing the book and going through all this, I didn't know, like, at some point you got to let go, right? You can't be there 24/7 staring, and that's not healthy for them either. And I had no idea. Like, I didn't know writing the book if he was going to be here or not. And I realized that was not the part of the story. The story is how we show up, because that's what we can do. We can show up, we can control how we think, we can put that message out in the universe. And then, ultimately what's going to happen is going to happen.
exactly.
Right. And because someone wrote me after I wrote that book and they go, oh, sure, it's easy for you because he survived. I go, that was never the point of the book. The point of the book is how you show up. That's your part. Right.
Yeah.
Part to do. I did my part. And then at some point you have to go, okay.
Yeah, no, it's really, I just think there's lots of lessons from that. And thankfully you did have a good outcome and he's doing great in the world. But yeah, that's, just shows you have to question and you have to, just second guess,
Yeah.
I guess, and just ask. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, we could keep talking. So I'm really excited about the summit. I think that there's just so much for everybody. There's just so many different areas that you're covering and so many different questions that are going to be answered. And the two things that you're giving, I downloaded both of them and I love the swap sheet. It's so wonderful, as well as your roadmap. That's fantastic too, because it just gives people, you want to just mention about that roadmap? That roadmap's really helpful.
I'm a very left brain system type of person. I like my to-do list organized. It was always like, okay, if you were going to get started, like, and it came from Margie when I first started in health. And I remember I took someone to the gym and I basically worked them out for 3 hours because I wanted them to have everything I knew. And they were in bed for a week, and I went, all right, that's not how we start. I said, hey, you want to get healthy? Cool. First thing I want you to do is swap these 7 foods. We're also going to lower your sugar impact. We're going to start your intermittent fasting. You need to meditate for sure. And you need to start some HIIT training. You should also do some yoga and maybe some resistance training. They'd be like, stop it. Right. But yet, like, if you look at just one thing, and I love that whole, little hinges swing big doors. One thing, win with the one thing, do the next thing. And that thing becomes totally habitual for you. Like, I decided during the pandemic that I was finally going to get out of my own way and start meditating. And that's all I focused on. 6 months, like, and it took, and I was like, this is like going to the gym. It was hard when like, it took 6 months to really get it to do anything for me, but I did it. And so now it's the thing and I do it every day. So, then I was like, all right, now I'm going to focus on yoga, so it was like, one thing at a time, get it into your life because no one got healthy by like eating broccoli one day, right?
It's so true. I'm listening, absolutely laughing because when I first started physical therapy, you'd give people 10 exercises. You're too stressed. You have to relax your muscles. You gave them all these relaxation things. And of course,
Did
they were a
nothing.
mess and they were overwhelmed, which is the total enemy, exactly what we're opposite. So I agree. One thing, master that, move on to the next. And that's really the only way that I
Yeah.
found for things to be sustainable. So in that roadmap, you do a good job of taking people like step by step.
Yep. Simple, easy to be. I was just thinking, I moved to Tampa, Florida, and I wanted a new chiropractor. And I went to this guy, and I didn't know that he was really like a movement. He was fantastic, but he gave me like this homework that was like, it was a day's worth of homework, including like 3 videos on breath work, like, and learning how to breathe. One was an hour. I go, listen, could you just give me 3 things that I can do? Just three things, simple, easy, 5 minutes each. Couldn't do it. Gave me then like, I was like, okay, I'd like,
Wow. Wow. Well,
I
I'm
know.
is there you want we could talk forever. I love talking with you. But is there anything else you want to leave everybody with before we end?
So I am like, I'm blown away with this summit because I was excited about the topic, but what I didn't realize, Margie, was how much I would learn. And I think you look at, there's always room for improvement. There's always a thing that you can do that's going to make you start to feel better, feel healthier. And so you may be coming in going, I really need to clean up my diet. Or you may be coming in going, I've got a really healthy diet. And you're going to be blown away either way because there are such actionable things in there. You're like, I didn't know that. Right? I mean, I would think at this point, I was like, I can't believe that. Like, I didn't know that. So what I love the most here is that it's so super actionable. And that's what I want to see is I want, see people go through this and grab 3 things that they can incorporate in. Cause that again, when we talked about how do we help those, I was like, how do I help 1 billion people get healthy? Well, you take like these experts that we have, like Will Lee and Max Lugavere and Gabrielle and Kellyanne Patricia, like we have amazing experts, put them all together. And, it's just such value packed information that's so easy to use. That's what I'm super excited about.
Well, I'm excited because I already listened to 3 lectures. I loved on the brain, like there are things what to eat for your brain. I mean, there's just as you said, lots of information that you can put into place. It's not vague. It's not,
Yeah.
it's solid things that are easy to do. And yeah, it's really exciting. So I'm so glad you were able to come on in your busy schedule and share this with us. And I'm really excited for your summit. And I'm going to see you.
And I'm excited to see you soon.
Yes, I can't wait. It's been a couple of years since we've had live, I've been
Oh,
able to come live. So yeah, I can't
get
wait.
the costume.
Yes, I haven't figured that one out yet.
That's important.
Well, thank you so much, JJ, and good luck with the summit. I can't wait.
Thank
And
you.
if people are listening afterwards, I'll give them the link also. If for some reason the summit's over, so they can contact you and continue
Oh,
learning about all the great things that you have to offer. So thanks so much for being here.
thank you.
I had so much fun being with JJ, and I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. And now have some new ideas that you can put into your life when it comes to what to eat, when to eat, and why. And I'm very excited about the summit. There's so many fabulous experts with great information that there's just something for everyone, as JJ said. All the links to the summit will be in the show notes. And if you're listening to this and the summit's over, then just go to jjvirgin.com/Margie and you'll be able to get more information from JJ. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.